Hey y'all, it's Jack Ryan Sullivan here at the All Guitar Network. I'm here with my good friend Christopher Parks, the CEO of Quilter Labs.
Howdy, howdy.
So, Quilter builds some of the most innovative, professional grade guitar amps being built today, in my opinion, and they don't have any tubes. And I know you're thinking, oh good, another solid state amp, but Chris, why is Quilter not just another solid state amp?
Well, and this is a tough question, so I always have to ask, are you sure you want to know the answer?
You want to know the answer?
It turns out that tube behavior in and of itself is, it has a set of properties, of physics. This is actually Pat saying, I'm stealing from Pat right now, but he says an electron has no idea if it's in a tube or a solid state device. It's an electron. It's going to go and behave in a certain way. The trick, he says, ultimately, is to understand what exactly is happening, and then you can recreate that behavior from one device to the other. So when you plug into a Quilter amplifier, it's not just like plugging into your typical solid state device. It's plugging into something that has a high input impedance. It has the characteristic behavior, sag. All this is built right into the amplifier itself. With traditional solid state, in some respects, you divorce the speaker from the equation because it has a low output impedance and a high damping factor. And so that just means that if the amplifier is telling the speaker what to do, it's not listening for anything different to happen in terms of frequency. So that's why when you plug and play a Quilter, it sounds open and breathy and full of life, as opposed to your traditional tube amplifier. We have things like global output, global power supplies. So if I plug in at 120 volts, it'll work. If I go to Europe and plug in on 230 volts, it'll work. And people think, well, yeah, that's great, but I'm never going to go to Europe. But here's the deal. When you go to the nightclub, it's not 120 volts in that wall. When the two deep sub-zeros are going and the deep fryers are all cooking, the microwaves are running, the neon signs are zapping all around you, that's not 120 volts. Walk outside the back of that place and listen to the transformer up there screaming at the top of its lungs for mercy. So oftentimes we find that when you plug in fact, I did an experiment once a long time ago, and I went to several different, here in Southern California, several different nightclubs and different houses of worship, and we plugged in to see what just the average mean voltage was on a typical summer day. It was about 80, 90 degrees outside, and it was 88 volts was the average.
Wow. So
the thing is, if you plug a tube amplifier in, you plug in to 120 volts as it's intended, and you will get exactly what was intended with it. All the components, everything is designed. The transformer itself is designed to operate at 120 volts. When you plug a traditional tube amplifier into 80 volts, you might notice none of the knobs work because none of the voltages are even high enough to get to the bottom end of the range of voltage for the knob. And so that matters on a tube amplifier, but in our case, I've actually run a Tone Block 200 on 27 volts AC.
Right.
And it sounded exactly the same as it did at 230 volts.
That makes total sense. When I was living in Nashville, playing the clubs there, 16 hours a day. I moved there with the boutique tube amp, and a black face deluxe reverb, which is one of my favorite, vintage amps. Of course it should be. But yeah, from club to club, it sounded different everywhere we went. And then someone said, you should try one of these new Quilters. They're like, peavy but boutique. And I'm like, now that interests me. So let me go see what this is all about. So I bought one of the first Aviators you guys made. It's a 112. And sure enough, I was playing through that, and I'm like, this is like a 100-watt deluxe reverb that sounds good everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's what got me hooked on it. But now you guys are, 3 generations into the Aviator?
So now we have the Aviator Cub, which kind of gives you 3 flavors of your tweed, your 65, and your 61 kind of Fenderish sound.
Yeah.
And then we have the Aviator Cub UK, which gives you a couple of versions of some classic Vox amps and one classic Marshall. So
bring in the huge pedal board. I don't need most of the things, especially with the Mach 3. That's just insane amp, and that's got both Aviators, and it's 200 watts.
It's the first 200 watt combo, so far as I know, really, that exists in the world, with a 300 watt speaker in it, so you won't necessarily just blow the
and I love that
speaker.
speaker. That's the Copperback.
Yeah. Celestian Copperback.
That speaker's like a new religion for me because it's so powerful, but it's so light.
Yeah, in the early days of testing the Mach 3, I had gone into the front room and it had, ceiling tiles, kind of like we do in here. And I had put earphones on because you can't play that thing at full volume. So I cranked the gain up, I cranked the volume. I just kind of did the old, Jimi Hendrix, just slap everything to.
Yeah.
I was actually trying to blow the speaker up was kind of the purpose of it. It was actually intentional. So, I did that and I just started playing just to kind of full blast. I actually had a screwdriver and I was just smacking the strings on the pickups. Well, I'm trying to make it fail. So that's you do things that what if the customer decides they're going to, I don't know, put pickups on their piano and start playing the low bass string, what's going to happen to the amplifier? So you kind of, when you're in that qualification phase of a product, I go looking for problems. I mean, and I like to be the guy that finds a problem before my customer does.
I'm on the Facebook group that you guys have, and everyone always talks about the support you guys give. It's just unparalleled. You call up, half the time you answer, half the time Pat will answer, and they can ask the guys who are in charge of this whole ship, hey, what's wrong with this? And it's so funny, half the time you're like, is the cable plugged in all the way? But you guys always have
more support for cable companies than for Quilter Labs.
But it's just like you're always everybody's like, oh man, there was a fault with the thing here. I've had it for 12 years and finally something went wrong.
Yeah.
And I just sent it back and they took care of me, so I hear that all the time, which is great because a lot of places just don't take care of the product anymore. It's like, we'll call a repairman. You guys are like, we'll get it.
Early on with the Mach 2 series, we had some switch failures. So we discovered that it was kind of a high rate of failure. So we actually, for that given set of parts, we actually extended the warranty.
Oh, wow.
So that's why you'll hear sometimes that, they fixed it, it was out of warranty. So if we find ourselves in a predicament where we have a problem, we'll either recall it, which we've done a couple recalls in the time that we've been running since 2011. But more importantly, it's kind of going through, like I said, and finding out in advance what the problems are. And I can honestly say, out of the thousands and thousands of calls that we've gotten over the years, most of them are just people that have bad cables. That are plugging into the front of the amplifier.
Yeah, it's always operator error.
It's not always. There are times. So like I've had a couple times where I've had to eat crow where I'm certain it was a cable, and come to find out, no, actually it was the amplifier. There's been 2 times exactly that I had that happen.
The Superblock series. That's something that's kind of like new for you guys. Like, it's released, last year, I believe?
Yeah.
The Superblock, and that's just such a cool thing because it's a pedal board amp, but it also has a power amp built in, which is just stupid cool, and they sound great.
It's the end result of what kind of began as an April Fool's joke. So the clever among you will look out there and you'll look for the Thormatron 10,000. And the Thormatron 10,000 was us. On April 1st, we announced the new Thormatron 10,000, a 10,000 watt thorium pellet fueled. It actually had qubit quantum co-processing technology that allowed the amplifier to detect bad notes before you played them and get you to practice more. Fantastic product. But it got us to thinking, hey, could we actually put an amplifier inside a little tiny pedal? And that became the Microblock 45. So, of course, I think Electro Harmonics had their, 44 Magnum.
Right.
So, of course, we had to be 45 watts.
Of course.
1 more watt, of course. In all joking aside, it's a fantastic little device, which led us to the Interblock 45, which in and of itself was kind of the first time that we really were aiming at making an interconnected device to connect between your pedal board and a PA system. It was a 45 watt amp, but the intention was to kind of be a new category.
Right.
The Phantom Block came along next, which was actually Pat had to plug directly into someone's PA system. And so he said, what if I had like just a device I could plug in to at least have that high impedance and that kind of cab sim factor, so when I plugged in, at least it sounded decent. And so that's where the Phantom Block came from, and that actually it surprised us. It did really well.
Keep it in my gig bag. I haven't ever had to use it, but it's there.
But then, of course, that led us to, well, what if we had a full-featured amplifier? And so we were like, the Interblock Pro, here it comes. In fact, somewhere I should probably keep the protos up here just for fun. But the Interblock Pro was kind of the next level Interblock, it was going to have less wattage, but we're doing that same magical formula where we retain kind of double the wattage, so we can recreate the voltage overshoot and whatnot that a tube amp does. And so it's like a 22 watt tube amp basically.
Right.
So
a deluxe reverb.
It kind of is, yeah. And so that, it's just a tiny little thing, fits right on your pedal board, and away you go. And I have to say, even I now play through a Superblock almost exclusive.
First time I got mine, I set it right beside the 65 basement head. I set it on top of the 65 basement head and ran it through the 212 cab with Utah speakers, and I put the settings very similar to each other and just kept going A, B, A, B, A, and it was so close. I mean, like 99% there. And what's beautiful about it, it costs a whole lot less than the 50 basement. It's a whole lot more portable, and it's probably a whole lot more reliable too.
Oh yeah. So, I mean, we go back to the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. What was the hallmark of a good television was the high quality. I mean, if you look at a tube from that era, it's versus one of our era, the quality difference is apparent instantly. I mean, there's tiny thin glass. I mean, they're being just as cheap as possible, because the only people left on Earth that are buying tubes are either the Soviet military or, well, guitarists. And I'd love to tell you that guitarists are all millionaires, but the truth is we haven't had a raise since the 60s. We're still getting paid the same.
I know the same money that the clubs were paying, they're still paying that money nowadays. It's nuts. And people are like, oh no, but at least we're getting paid.
Yeah.
We're playing like, $15,000 rigs at a bar, and it's like, we can't even pay the insurance that it costs to maintain it off the gig money. So no, for sure. But no, it's great. They're super reliable. And then my favorite amp. I've got a lot of amps at home, but that's when I record, do any sort of videos, demos, anything. It's always the Quilter amp. So
you'll look back from 50 years from now and say, now that was the workhorse. That was the thing I took out and actually did the hard work with.
Right.
But they don't make the 50s and 60s amplifiers anymore. You don't really want someone spilling beer on your 65 Deluxe Reverb, no matter how good it sounds.
No, first night I gig with that Mach 3 before that fateful night. Someone spilled a drink and it kept going, no problem. Wow. 3 more hours, we were good to go. No worries. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to get the little micro block out. Nope, all good, all good. Chris, I appreciate you having us here today. Looking forward to
thanks so much for coming, and enjoy it. I'm going to turn you over to Peter. He'll give you the grand tour. Sounds and good, much obliged, friend. Thanks for coming.
Just go down these steps right here.
This reminds me of an episode of The Office,
Yeah.
I'm looking for Daryl down here.
Gentlemen. Alright, so back here we got Kevin, the recent addition to the team. And Pyro, who has ran the back for like 10 years now. If you own a Quilter amp, this guy probably had something to do with it.
Right, build it, had my hands on it.
So we're going to get some amps together for you guys. We got 2 Aviator Cubs, one of the original US version and the new UK version. And then we got a Bassblock 800 and our Bassstock 12 cabinet. We thought it'd be cool to probably show you this docking feature we have that makes kind of gigging musicians' lives easier. Quilter performance amplification is kind of the slogan. So we're gonna unpop this box right here, get the cab out, and it's kind of a cool thing we do. So you can interact with your amp like a combo amp or a head really easily. So Hiro's gonna pop the box, we'll get the cab out, and we'll show you, it's kind of something cool we came up with.
And Peter, you're holding the amp in your hand.
Yeah, so here's the Bassblock 800. It's 800 watts, it weighs
800 watts.
4 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, and we mean it. It's 800 watts on all frequencies at all times. Anywhere in the world. All of the Quilter amps have a universal power supply, so you can plug it in anywhere. You don't need a transformer to switch power or anything like that. They're very stable for generator powered stages for musicians. You can actually kind of plug them into a variac and turn the knob. You're not going to hear any tonal difference.
Really?
So if you're at a gig and they kick on the AC or the deep fryer or whatever the heck requires a lot of power, you're not going to hear your tone change. One of the unfortunate drawbacks about tube amps is they're very voltage dependent. I mean, just go into Eddie Van Halen's history and you hear everyone argue about how he set that to get his tone. We just make ours work on all voltages, so you know, you don't have to worry about anything like that, and it's not also going to not put any wear and tear on your amp. You know, tube amps want to see an exact voltage coming in. It gets multiplied up across the plate, and you know, if there's any deviation in the wall, you can wear your amp out quicker. Nice thing about these, they're very reliable. We want it to be your daily driver. We want to empower gigging musicians so they can go get paid, do the work, then go home to their loved ones. So that's in our 800 watt amps as well. Kind of neat.
Crazy.
So here's our bass stock 12. You want to show them how to set it all up?
Yeah, to install this, basically what you want to do is you want to have it in the face.
Yeah, come on in here.
And then you want to basically take the back plate off. And so after you take
No
off
tools
the
involved.
No tools.
no tools involved, thumb screws, which is awesome. Once you have your actual amp, what you want to do is you actually want to get your cable, which is 1/4 inch to 1/4 inch, and you don't have to tie it or zip it to it. You basically connect it to the amplifier. And don't mind my shaky hands, first time on camera.
I don't get nervous.
And what you do is you want to actually wrap the cable around so it's actually nice and snug, but not too much. You just want to have play. And on the back of this actual speaker, you actually have a section where your feet actually lock into position. And once it's there, you connect it there. So now your cable is not dangling loose. You actually put your back plate on and you get your little thumb screws. And you actually screw them on. And now your actual amp is ready to go. Wow. The only thing missing is your power cord, which actually comes with the amplifier, and it's a locking power connector.
I love those.
Which is amazing. So if somebody trips on the cable, it's actually not going to disconnect, so you don't have to worry about, you know, losing any of your power whatsoever.
Wow. Just like that,
So
you take
just
your
like
head,
that.
you can interact with it like a combo amplifier. You're off to the gig.
Boom.
Piece of
800
cake.
watts, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that setup weighs in around 30 pounds, something like that.
These those
pretty light.
Those 810 SVTs everyone used to gig
Oh
with.
my god! I used to work at Sam Ash. I remember the first time I sold one of those things, and I had no idea. I never picked one up. Are you kidding me? Like,
It's insanity. I mean, they sound great, but I mean,
yeah, it's a standard for a reason. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you also have your cover, so if you don't want to, you know, get it all dinged up, you actually have your cover, which actually is great for when you're gigging. You just have your cover that you have.
And slip covers are included with all Quilter combos, so all cabinets, all combo amplifiers. Just like that. Off to the gig. There's a nice pouch on the back too.
that's one of my favorite things about it. You got places to put your cables, whatever else you need.
Yeah.
There.
Awesome.
So there you have it. Bass Stock 800 and a Bass Stock 12 cabinet.
Very cool.
So what we have right here is actually the prototype Aviator Cub. See the chassis here, you can see on the front. The cabinet is a little shallower.
Yeah.
The only thing is when it's down low like that, you can't really see any of the controls. So we ended up putting the chassis on the back so you can reach over and see it.
Right.
We made the cabinet slightly larger, kind of enhance the bass response. And made the package just a little bit neater. It's kind of a funky prototype. Here's another one I guess I could show you guys. Let me see. Interblock Pro is right around here. I mean, this is all like old prototypes that never came to be for any variety of reasons. Let's see. What can I grab? Oh, this is kind of fun. Yeah, people ask about old Quilter stuff. This is an old Quilter tube bass amp that I found on Craigslist in Texas. This thing weighs like more than an SVT. You can see all of the tubes in the back of there.
Wow, those things are huge.
Yeah, I found it on Craigslist. We had to convince the guy that we were actually Quilter, that we wanted to buy it. He was kind of like sketched out. We had to send the guy money, wait for it to clear, get it to FedEx, have FedEx build a crate to get it to us.
Wow.
But it is It's very heavy. There's a reason we don't make those tube amps anymore. Let's see what else we got. Let's go on this way. I'll show you Pat's lab. Actually, in our lobby here, did Chris show you old number one?
No.
This is the first Quilter amp ever made.
Wow.
In 1967, I believe, Pat's brother's bass player needed an amplifier and didn't have a lot of scratch. And Pat figured, you know what, I can probably make that
I
work.
could just build an amp.
Yeah, so I think he had to build it like 4 times. I think he jokingly says he probably made about 12 cents an hour or something like that by the time the thing finally worked. But we're glad to have it back here in the front of our lobby. Still works today. And he made the cabinet and everything himself, I think, in his mom's garage.
Wow.
So that's the first Quilter. There's a couple other early ones here, like the Bantam amp, which actually has QSC branding on it. So there's kind of like a transition era before when Pat started getting out of the guitar amp stuff and into the pro audio stuff. A couple more amplifiers here. You can see some old pictures. Young Pat Quilter. This is, I believe, right when they started getting into the power amps.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then the Andrews brothers that are the kind of 3 founders of QSC, sort of. Pat started it, and then those guys came on and helped run the show.
Right.
Come on through here. Here's some storage, some other kind of classic amplifiers. This is the Mazion. Pat made this tube amplifier for his brother, and he had figured out some way to run the tubes colder and still get kind of all of the tone and great things that tubes do and make them last longer. So this has, I think, near original tubes, and it was gigged like crazy.
This was kind of his transition into going back to solid state, I guess.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, start to calm down on the tube thing.
Yeah, well, what he had, people have had different philosophies about how to make a solid state amp. As well as tube amps. You know, I'm sure Leo Fender probably wasn't like super psyched when everybody wanted more overdrive, you know, because that's like a dirty, improper amplifier.
Exactly.
So a lot of the original solid state amps are just built like PAs, you know, because that's what the technology was at the time.
Right.
Pat had always looked at the issue as an engineering problem where we need to make the solid state amplifiers behave like a tube amplifier. We're not trying to just make a signal louder and kind of copy a sound. We want the innards to do the same stuff. So the patent they have is like a recipe of all of the things tube amps do and how to achieve them. So there's circuits for, you know, even and odd order harmonics to blend together. There's a sag circuit. We can set the damping factor relationship with the speaker. There's a whole bunch of components. And so through the history of Quilter, you know, Pat has always just worked on how do I solve this problem, and it's kind of fun. You can go through all of the eras of amplifiers as he figures out one piece of kind of the magic before they're all stacked together. So that's an earlier one, just an experiment, I think, to get the tubes to last a little longer. It's kind of this fan shed, little fan on the back of it to keep the amp cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Pat's office. A Rogue microwave for a reason I don't know. Yeah. And then here's where the magic will be happening. How do I get more lights? There we go. So here's Pat's bench. This is where all the designing goes, all the testing, all the prototyping. You can see, like, there's just cables and parts everywhere, and old amplifier chassis from who knows what. It's really anyone's guess.
Hey, it's Jack again here. Just wanted to kind of take you through really quick what we're leaving with today here at Quilter. This is their Block Dock 12 with the bass block 800. That's an 800 watt bass amp. This whole combo weighs around 30 pounds or so. Just crazy. This is one of their brand new Aviator Cubs. This is the US version, so it's got the tweed, the blind, and the blackface settings on it. Super cool amp. It's 50 watts, I believe. Yep, it's got a great speaker setup in it. And then, of course, this is the newest offering from Quilter and the Combo Amps, which is the Aviator Cub UK, which has got the JMPs, the ACs, and the top boosts on it. Another 50 watt amp, kind of an homage to the kind of British sounding things. We got the US stuff here. And all these amps we're actually going to be using exclusively on the show that's coming up. Can't wait for you guys to see this. We love this company. They're a US based company right here in Irvine, California now. So yeah, just if you like what you hear, you got to get a Quilter.